All right, welcome back, guys. And today we are going to have another host joining us for today. He is also in IU STV along with me and Ethan. This is Joseph Klepfer. Joseph, how are you doing today?
Good. Ready to talk about some college football. Let's get it.
Me too. After last night's rankings, they came out a little bit later than normal, I think, partially because of Election Day coverage. I think they wanted to get it out at 7 last week because that's when nothing was going on during the election. But since the election's over, they can post it a little bit later. So I remember waiting at 7. I'm like, when are these rankings gonna come out? I'm just sitting in front of the TV. I'm like, what is going on? And then I look at my phone. I'm like, looking up the times for when they're gonna publish it, and then it said 8:30. I'm like, you've got to be joking me right now.
Sandwich between 2 college basketball games.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, come on. What are we doing? Why can't we just stay with 7? It's just.
I agree.
Yeah. But, the rankings this week, kind of crazy. I mean, the first 3 were not really surprised. I mean, you got Oregon at 1, Ohio State at 2, and Texas at 3. I think one of the big shockers was Penn State being at 4 above Indiana because of, IU being undefeated. They're in the same conference, all that stuff. I mean, Penn State's only real big win so far this year was against Illinois. And Illinois is not a bad team, but, it's not really, the best win, I guess. I feel like it's kind of comparable to, us destroying Nebraska, considering Ohio State, struggled against them. I feel like that should give us an edge over Penn State. But, oh well, I guess. And then BYU's at 6 after barely escaping Utah.
They should have lost.
Yeah, they absolutely should have lost. They literally got lucky on that 4th down and got a call.
It was very ticky-tack. I was watching it. I'm like, oh, Utah's going to take this one. And then they called that, was it holding? Yes, but it's 4th down, and it did not affect the play, at all. At all.
Yeah, no, it didn't really affect the play, but it, unfortunately for Utah, gave life to BYU's offense for one last little push for that field goal.
Yep.
Tennessee's at 7, and I'm very curious after this weekend where Tennessee is going to sit, depending on this Georgia game, if they jump the rankings, maybe jump Texas for that SEC championship spot, or if they fall completely out of the rankings. Notre Dame's at 8. They basically had a bye week. They went up against Florida State. Florida State's literally won a singular game this year, so
it's awful.
Congrats, Notre Dame, I guess. Miami goes to 9, which I was kind of surprised they didn't fall a little bit further just because of how far Georgia fell. But then again, they've only taken 1 loss. So Alabama's at 10, Ole Miss is at 11, and Georgia's at 12. Boise State's at 13. So those are pretty much the, I guess, top 12. I added Boise State in there because they're in the bracket.
Yeah.
And they're 13th. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I guess when you guys first looked at the rankings, what was your guys' initial reaction to it? Because I was pretty indifferent about it because I'm really happy where with IU was, but then there's I was a little upset that A&M didn't really get any recognition, even though they had a bye week, but they're still in the top part of the SEC standings. They're a 1-loss SEC team. And then, of course, SMU is undefeated in ACC play, but yet they're 14th in the poll. I would have thought that they would have taken that that ACC conference championship spot, but I don't know. That's just me. I don't know if you guys were the same, but
yeah. Well, one of the things that sticks out to me is that Georgia beat Texas at Texas, and Texas is ranked 3rd, and Georgia's the first team out right now. That's the best win of the season, if you think about it. Going to Texas, beating that team by double digits, and you're the first team out. Granted, Georgia did look really bad against Ole Miss, only scoring 10 points. But I feel like Texas is just ranked so high they don't have any other marquee win. Their next marquee win is against Vanderbilt.
Of all teams.
By 3 points. I understand Vandy's better this year than in past years, but I mean, come on. Like, how are we ranking Texas at 3? Penn State. James Franklin's been a fraud, in my opinion. I mean, he always loses to Ohio State. He never can get the job done. And it just doesn't make any sense. They don't have any marquee wins. Like you said, they only have beat Illinois and Indiana. Granted, like, I know people are going to hate on Indiana's schedule. The difference is if you look how Indiana's beating teams, besides how they beat Michigan, they're beating them by substantial. Like, it's not close.
Yeah, no,
Like,
it's not even close at all. It's literally like 14 plus points like each win. I mean, we dropped like what 350 bombs on teams this
Yeah.
year, including Nebraska, who had a top 10 rushing defense, and yet we dropped 5 rushing touchdowns on them.
Yeah,
Like,
they didn't give up a rushing touchdown until they played us, and we just bulldozed them. And that's a common opponent with Ohio State and Nebraska. 17-21 was the final score between Nebraska and Ohio State, and now it's Indiana beating Nebraska 56-7. I think was that score. Like, if we're just going off common opponents, like, Indiana's got to be over Penn State. I don't get why they overrate Penn State every year. They do this all the time, and Notre Dame, like, that loss, that's a stain to NIU, was it?
big stain. Yeah, NIU.
It's a big stain. And I know they've been taking care of business, but it's like when you see teams with one loss like that, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Nah, I agree on the Penn State slander. He knows how much I just like this Penn State every week.
Penn State's biggest hater.
No, literally, I am, and yeah, whatever. But no, yeah, I think one thing that kind of stuck out to me is when you were talking about like the Georgia and Texas game and like how that was the biggest game of the season. I think the biggest game for them is actually coming up next week. This is kind of like a go big or go home type game. I mean, if they're already first team out and now they have to host number 7 Tennessee, and I think even for Tennessee too, like they're already a one-loss team, like they're not undefeated, so. Whichever team loses here, they're going to start to slide out of the rankings because, like you said, Ryan, about SMU, there's going to kind of be more wiggle room for them. And then you have A&M, who's kind of on the climb, and even Colorado if they kind of want to make a push outside of the Big 12 championship game. But overall, like I'm not like too mad about with the rankings, but I think a lot of these teams, especially like I'll give you an example, like Colorado. I don't think like even though they're not ranked in the top 14 or top 12, I guess if you want to call it. They don't need to worry specifically about where they're ranked because the cards are in their hands now. Because if they just win out, they will make the Big 12 championship game, and all they have to do is just win out. So realistically, they don't have to worry where they're ranked for the next few weeks if they just keep winning. And obviously now they play Utah, which, like we talked about, who just narrowly lost to BYU by 1, like hosting BYU. But yeah, it's going to be a big week for a lot of these teams, and I'll tell you, like I would say the game of the week's got to be Tennessee Georgia, just because of like the implications on that and where like another SEC team like would fall, because like we saw that with Alabama LSU, and now LSU's completely dropped out. They're at 22, like they're still ranked, but the chance they make the playoffs is completely out the window now. They're 6-3, like the chance we see a 3-loss team in the playoffs is so low, but. Yeah, it's it'll be an interesting week to see how Tennessee and Georgia do.
Funny thing about LSU being ranked 22, South Carolina's ranked above them 21, and in the head-to-head, LSU beat South Carolina. Just it's irrelevant considering they're both going to be out the playoff, but just a funny thing there.
I think, like, honestly, like when I saw that, I wasn't too mad about it, just because I feel like South Carolina's been pretty hot lately.
Oh yeah,
and I think also South Carolina did beat a common opponent that LSU did have, which is Texas A&M, and they destroyed Texas A&M, and Texas A&M destroyed LSU. So I think they were probably thinking like transitive property or something like that. But yeah, no, I guess like when I was looking at the rankings, like I thought they were gonna take, like for the conference champions, they were gonna take the highest ranked, like based on conference play. So, like, that's why I thought SMU was going to, like, get pushed into the rankings when I first saw the rankings. But then when they weren't, I was like, oh, they're just doing it based on where the teams are ranked, like,
SMU can
I guess
control
overall
their destiny, right? If they just went out, like, win the ACC.
They just have to win the ACC championship, and then they'll move up.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it's a tall task, though, especially in that SEC. So, I mean, it's a lot harder than what people think. I mean, if we just like look at their schedule too, like for the rest of the season, second. Like they have BC, Virginia, and then Cal. Like it's a very doable 3 games, and if they do end up winning out, they'll be the only undefeated ACC team in conference play. And it'll be interesting to see too, like between Clemson and Miami, who kind of gets that second spot, because obviously that Miami loss to Georgia Tech, like they fell behind, and well, I guess like for the story this year, they love playing from behind, and I guess that's why Cam Ward's now a Heisman candidate, because he has to keep throwing the ball, and we've seen that like just time and time again, like just him slinging the rock deep down the field and somehow bringing Miami back to like sometimes these close wins. And now obviously it kind of haunts them now with the 5-point loss to Georgia Tech. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the ACC shapes out. And I remember like you were saying a couple weeks ago too, how SMU and Pitt, they're kind of like creeping in, and obviously now Pitt's kind of gone, but SMU, they've completely taken over the ACC, and really it's their conference now for the next 3 weeks. Like the games they have left are all unranked team. I mean, obviously Boston College was ranked earlier in the season, but they haven't looked as great since then. So realistically, this is SMU's ACC for this year, and it'll be interesting to see kind of how they play this out. Like them and Boulder are just in like very similar spots right now. I mean, obviously SMU's kind of got more leeway just because they're undefeated and Boulder is holding second in the Big 12. But yeah, SMU and Boulder both outside the top 12, but can very easily in 3 weeks be right in.
It's very true.
And also, just kind of going off of that as well, I mean, if Boise State is still above either of those two teams and they win the ACC or Big 12, Boise State is going to get a bye week, which is just crazy to think about. Like, if you would have told me that a group of 5 team was going to go into this playoff with a bye week, I would have called you crazy, and I probably would have laughed you out of the room. I'd have been like, there's no way that that's going to happen. But sure enough, you've got Boise State with the possibility, like it's almost like with each passing week, their chance of getting a bye week just increases. And then not to mention the fact that SMU, they just joined the ACC this year. They were formerly a group of 5 team. Like they were a group of 5 school last year, and now they're on top of the ACC conference, which is just absolutely crazy to think about. And then like you guys were saying about the Tennessee-Georgia game, I mean, for Tennessee, I think for them, they have to win this game if they want to make it to that SEC championship game, because they'll not only be propping themselves up as a 1-loss SEC team, but they'll also effectively boot Georgia out of contention entirely, which is just one less team that they have to worry about. And then they pretty much just have to pray that Texas or Texas A&M loses one of their games, which, I mean, one of them is bound to lose one of their SEC games because those two teams play each other at the very end of the year. So we could very well see Tennessee in this SEC championship by the end of the year.
Is that at Texas A&M?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be a great game.
And I'll tell you, too, like, if you look at the 4 conference winners, it could, except, well, I'm kind of pushing it with the Big Ten, but all of those could be changed by the end of the season. And, like, for example, like Oregon, if somehow IU manages to pull out a game against Ohio State and then Oregon, like, that would be insane. So that could be replaceable. Obviously, Miami, they could be very replaceable with either Clemson or SMU. Then for the Big 12, Colorado can slide in instead of BYU. And then Texas for SEC, obviously, like you just said, Tennessee, I mean, A&M, like, there's a couple other, like, what we have right now is nowhere near to what it's going to look like, I think, towards the end of the season.
A lot of moving parts.
There's so many moving parts, and obviously, like, with the 12 team, like, it just gives so many more opportunities to other teams that you wouldn't normally see in the playoffs. Like, obviously, like, Indiana, you barely see them ever. Boise State, like, BYU, like, it's wide open until, like, you have the last couple weeks come down. Like, you won't start to get a painted picture of where everything is at. But I think overall, there's still a lot of key games that are coming up, and I think the upset that I picked at least for this week is it'll be a big it'll change the rankings a lot, I think, and it'll bring one team from the very bottom like up to the way top and take that 12th spot. That's just kind of like a hint of who I'm taking.
Mm-hmm. Are we going to be able to guess, or?
You can guess. I mean,
you said from the bottom to the very top?
Yeah.
Are you talking about rankings-wise, or?
Do you mean like from the bottom of the top 25 or the bottom of just the bottom?
No, it's like bottom, like top 25.
Bottom top 25.
Hmm.
Interesting.
I
I
mean,
mean,
you saw the Kansas Iowa State game. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh, I know.
I think I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
What?
I think you're gonna pick. It's the Kansas BYU game.
No, it's not.
Really?
It's
Really?
It's Boise State, San Jose State.
Oh.
Give me San Jose State, baby.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
you just wait. You just wait. I got called out for the Kansas game last week. Just wait. Watch. Boise State's gonna lose to San Jose State. I'm calling it. That's my upset of the week. We'll see.
I mean, I actually kind of like that pick just because I mean,
They almost
Boise
beat.
State barely beat Nevada.
Yeah.
Like they only won by 1 touchdown, and Nevada's kind of like mid-tier
Yep.
Mountain West.
San
So
Diego State beat
uh,
Nevada.
yeah, this could be maybe last week was the beginning of the end for Boise State, and then they take a loss to San Jose State and just completely get bumped out of
That would clear everything.
out of
That's why.
contention.
That's why we bring up Army to win the G5. That's what my.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying.
And then they almost beat number 19th ranked Washington State. San Jose State did. 52 to 54 was the final in OT.
Wow.
Wow.
I feel like just looking at these games, like there's so many possible upsets like coming up. I mean, you've got Utah, Colorado, the way Utah played BYU, that could be an upset. Pitt, Clemson could be an upset just because Pitt's unranked, and they're still, despite being a 2-loss SEC team or ACC team right now. Excuse me. Like they could still beat Clemson. I mean, Pitt's defense is phenomenal, except against SMU. Arkansas, Texas, maybe. I mean, Arkansas is kind of good like every other week. This could be the one week where Arkansas could have a good game for all we know. Then you've got, Virginia, Notre Dame could very well be an upset as well. I mean, maybe not. I mean, Notre Dame's been kind of hot, but at the same time, Virginia also has been kind of heating up a little bit as well. And then Arizona State, Kansas State, I think that will be a really good game to watch. Honestly, I think like there's that one, obviously. And then Oregon, Wisconsin, I kind of hope this happens just for our sake mostly. But I think it's entirely possible. I mean, Oregon's going to be going to Camp Randall at night. And I mean, we all know like how night games are. I mean, everyone's hating on Big Noon Fox because they're taking away all the good games and putting them at noon instead of letting them play at night because that atmosphere is different. Like it's just
What do you guys think
way
about
more electric.
Ohio State and Indiana being at noon?
I think it plays so much into our favor.
I'm
I'm not even gonna lie. Like it plays so much in our favor.
Yeah, no. We've had one night game this year, I think, against Western Illinois. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think a day game is going to help a lot. I know those OSU undergrads, they get pretty lit on that Friday night. So I don't know how many of them will be showing out to a Saturday noon game, but no, I think it'll definitely be. I think it'll definitely play a big factor. But I think the biggest thing for me, especially too, like if even like just based off current rankings too, like if we were supposedly to play Alabama, I would be scared for my life just because of like the capacity that the stadium can hold. Because Indiana, they're not familiar with how many fans can obviously we've sold out stadiums this year.
Oh, of course.
But
Several
times. But
yeah. The hotel situations.
oh yeah.
They've been talking about that.
Yeah.
Like how they're gonna accommodate people. And that will be on a week, by the way, on December 20th or December 21st. Those are the two slots for those games. December 20th is commencement day for early graduation, like people graduating in December. And then December 21st, you have a men's basketball game going on. So
December 20th, I think, is when the playoffs start.
yeah,
isn't
that's
it?
what I'm saying. Like you have two things conflicting there. So December 20th, you either have IU playing if based on this projection, or
Yeah.
December 21st, and both days you have big things going on campus. So
Yeah, I would just be scared though for crowd size because I don't know how well they're gonna perform with like two times the amount of people in the stadium. I mean,
it'll probably be snowing.
Yeah, that too. But I like the amount of pressure. Like I think because we saw against the Michigan game, like how the amount of pressure was on Rourke in that second half,
Yeah.
and he did not perform. And that was in our stadium. Like if that was in Michigan, I think we would have lost that game. I'll be so honest. Like if we were in that scenario going into the fourth quarter with that score, I think Michigan would have won. But I think obviously I think the 12 o'clock game will definitely help IU in general. But well, we're gonna have to see.
I think Michigan is still one of those brands that we were trying to get over. That like
yeah, kind of like James Franklin with Ohio State.
Exactly.
Except he hasn't been able to do it, and we were.
we
so,
were.
Sorry, James Franklin.
And every good team needs a grind it out win. Like
Oh,
in-
1,000%.
Yeah. Like the difference is if you watch Georgia versus Florida the week before, like I feel like there's a difference between that and then us versus Michigan.
Yeah. I actually 100% agree, and I'm actually really glad you brought that up because the main reason I think Georgia pulled away in that game was because their quarterback,
DJ Lagway.
yeah, he got injured.
Florida got hurt. Yeah.
He got hurt and he left. So they were playing
They
essentially.
still try to give it away.
Yeah, they still were Carson Beck was just passing out interceptions to Florida like it was candy.
By
I
the
mean
way,
that costed Georgia against Ole Miss
They should bench
over
him.
the weekend. Oh,
They
absolutely.
should bench him. Like he's costing them games. I don't.
Nine
When was the last time we saw
interceptions.
Georgia out of a 14 playoff? They're about to be out of a 12-team playoff now.
Yeah.
Like that says a lot.
And it's because
just
of him, man.
So everyone knows. So yeah, they gotta
just-
make a move.
He just
now.
loves throwing interceptions. There's no way around it. You cannot you cannot have red zone turnovers. You cannot have turnovers at this point in the season. And
Yeah. especially when you're at 2 losses like Georgia is right now. I mean, and Tennessee's defense. I mean, I said this last week, but Tennessee's defense is good, just like Ole Miss's.
oh yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
if you're I mean, he was also fumbling the ball too. If you fumble the ball,
No.
throw the ball to Tennessee, they're going to capitalize, and their offense is pretty solid, especially in the second half.
One
But
thing Tennessee can do is run the ball effectively, and they have a really good defense. Now, quarterback play has been a little bit shaky, but Nico's had a couple confidence games here recently. Just when you can run the ball, I know it's at Georgia.
Yeah.
But I'm picking Tennessee.
I am too.
For my
Tennessee's
upset of
rolling right now.
Yeah, Tennessee's rolling right now, and one thing that eliminates crowd noise is when you can run the football because you can't really hear anything when you're passing and stuff. But Jalen Milroe, if you saw what he did to LSU, they just ran the ball. LSU couldn't do anything about it because they're saying we're bigger, we're stronger, we're faster than you, and we're gonna come right at you, and that's exactly what happened.
And they emptied the entire stadium. They emptied Death Valley. They were storming the parking lots. They quite literally.
So that's the hardest place to play, right?
Apparently, I mean that's what we've been told.
I'll also tell you too, about the Carson Beck thing. I don't know if you guys saw this too. It actually kind of made me mad, even though I hate Georgia. But they were at the end of the game. He after the Ole Miss, they were down 18 at this point. And he was caught laughing with one of his teammates.
I
Oh,
saw
yeah.
that. That
And
pissed me off.
That made me so mad.
You guys
'cause
see
I
the
was
clip
What are you
of-
doing?
You guys see the clip of this safety for Georgia? I think he's a safety. And he was celebrating with one of the Ole Miss fans, on the field,
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
jumping up and down.
I did see why. It was because apparently it was
Hometown friend.
family friends
Yeah.
and stuff, and
Yeah.
But I mean,
Not a good
still,
look.
Not a good
Not a
look.
good look.
I mean, as Kirby Smart said, a very poor emotional decision.
Kirby Smart called him an idiot.
Yeah, he called him an idiot,
Would
which
you-
I think is funny because he's literally said less worse things about his players getting in car accidents and stuff and doing reckless driving, but apparently you go out and you celebrate with the family friend, you're an idiot. But okay.
when it comes to football, Kirby Smart don't play around. Anything else is kind of a gray area. But, oh my goodness.
I think kind of going off that, I mean, Georgia is still favored in this game against Tennessee. Like you guys have been saying, it's at home. So do we still count Tennessee versus Georgia as a upset?
That's an upset.
Because I don't really think so, just because Tennessee's ranked above Georgia, but they're
Dude,
not favored.
Watch
so
us
I don't
say
know.
all this, and then Georgia just stomps them, like, for whatever reason.
I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. I wouldn't be. We've seen so many times this year where we've just like expected like the most unexpected results. Like just like why? Well, Purdue will beat Penn State. Like some BS like that will happen at some point for the rest of the season. But no, I think it's gonna be a toss up. Like even though like the spread or whatever is favored in Georgia's, like Tennessee, they've like we've said, they've looked unstoppable, and everything changes from week to week. Like for 1 week we'll see, I don't know, like we'll see a team score like 50 plus, and then next week they're gonna go out and win by like 5 with 20 points. Like it just changes from week to week, and I think the atmosphere also plays like a big part in that to like kind of like get their fans involved, and I think like that's why I think like for us like Coach Sig like he's so interactive with us, and because he knows how important like the fans are, the students are to like kind of creating like that Hoosier atmosphere that kind of throws people off guard. And obviously like we said like earlier or not, well, like last week, but we said like the Michigan's QB problem, like how they've kind of struggled throughout the year, and like they've had to swap between 2 quarterbacks, and it kind of played a factor in last week's game. And I mean obviously they relied so heavily on that run game, and I mean, you could tell by the score, like it didn't really push them to like where they wanted to get to with that. But I think a big factor of that was the crowd, and you could see Signetti on the sideline throughout the game, like kind of running up back and forth, like kind of like pumping his arms, like kind of like get into it, because he saw us kind of like lose. Because I was there for the whole game, and he kind of saw us lose like motivation or like hype because of like certain things that were happening throughout the game.
Of course.
So I think that really does play a part, and I think like having the 12-team playoff, getting that home game is huge first week before you start going off to neutral sites.
Yeah, 100%. And also like I think that game, especially towards the end of that game, it was so poorly called, like against us. Like there was pass interference calls that weren't called, holding calls, like just all of this stuff just happening in
we
favor
also had
of
a lot
Michigan.
of drops.
Yeah, we also
Surratt had like
yeah.
2 drops that he I've never seen him drop a pass until the Michigan game. Like, and he had one that could have ended the game, like at the 2-yard line, the diving one. Like, just we did not play our best, but at the end of the day, a win is a win. And in Indiana football, we will take that, especially being 10-0 for the first time in program history.
Ever. Literally, like the first time ever. And I think also like, I mean, me and Ethan have been kind of talking about this in the past few episodes about like how, I mean, like this is when we were winning like by 14 plus points. It's like, when are we going to get that game where we like struggle a little bit, where we start off down? I mean, last week we played Michigan State. We started off down 10-0, and then we like just dropped 47 on top of them after that. And now this like past weekend against Michigan
in the second half.
In the second half, it was a very close game, 20-15.
Well, I think
it was just like in the nitty gritty. Like it was that game. Like I think we won that in the trenches, and Michigan is one of those teams where it's super hard to beat them in the trenches because their lines, both on offense and defense, Michigan is known for producing some of the best offensive and defensive line players in all of college football. So winning that game the way that we did, I think, is huge going into this bye week and also going into play Ohio State, because Ohio State, another thing about them, they're playing Northwestern this weekend, so they aren't going to be as fresh. And
at
for
a baseball
all we know,
stadium, by the way.
I mean, for all we know, Ohio State, Will Howard could get injured or someone else could get injured, and it could completely change what happens when they play us next weekend.
And by the way, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, those are 2 defensive linemen for Michigan. Don't be surprised if they go first round NFL, first or second round. Mason Graham is definitely going first round, but
And like to your point about like the Michigan, I think if there was one game where I would hope it would be close to like for the players to kind of get that like feel, it would be this week, because now they could settle down. They're one of like the 2 10-0 teams with like us in Oregon. They get a bye week. They can relax for like a week. They can kind of like look back on that, like see what that like feeling is kind of like, because now going into Ohio State, that's kind of what they're gonna have to go up against. Like same thing, like it's gonna be a close game like that. So it was kind of good for them to see that. And I think also what really helps too is Ohio State's number 2. So, like, I was honestly kind of rooting for Ohio State to be as high as they could possibly be, and I think 2 was the highest spot they could be because obviously Oregon's going to be 1.
Yeah.
So there's going to be, and if Indiana does lose, I'm gonna be watching like how much we're going to get penalized, and I think if we lose, every point is going to count. And I think
I agree.
like no matter like with a loss, I think a 3-point loss is gonna be very different from a 10-point loss because 2 possessions plays a huge factor. But like, to your point about oh, I lost where I was. Yeah, someone else can take it.
No, it's all good. Look how loss to Ohio State affected Penn State. They're ranked 4th.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you take the brand bias out of it, if we lose to Ohio State by the same way Penn State lost to them,
We'd move 1 spot maybe.
yeah, but they're not going to do that because this committee, I hate to say this, but they're all over the place. I don't know whether they value head to head. I don't know whether they value pure record. They definitely value like what conference you're in, depending on if you're in the SEC or not. But this committee's all over the place, like with how they evaluate teams, and it's kind of frustrating, to be honest.
I mean, kind of going off that too. I mean, we saw with the rankings, there's 4 SEC teams and 4 Big Ten teams. I feel like if the Big Ten, like our top 4 teams, like us, Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon, like if we weren't playing the way that we're playing, they would absolutely have 1 or 2 of us like either out or like towards the bottom instead of the SEC teams, and there'd be like 5 or 6 SEC teams because they love their SEC teams, but the like Big Ten, we have not given them an opportunity to really punish our conference. Like we're showing like we're here to like win. We're gonna whichever team in the Big Ten is gonna go far in the tournament. Like we're gonna bring home another national championship for the Big Ten. I mean, Michigan brought one home last year. We'll see who brings it. I mean, Michigan's obviously not going to bring one home this year because they are literally 5-5. They have no shot at getting into the playoff. But I mean, I think a Big Ten team could very well bring this home. But kind of going back to the upsets, because I kind of want to hear what your upset of the week is, Joseph. Mine, personally, the one I'm going to pick that I think will happen is I think Arizona State is going to upset Kansas State. And I feel like Big 12 upset, I mean, they're both in the Big 12. Arizona State is still, I mean, they're 7-2, just like Kansas State is. They've been playing pretty well all year. It's at night, and it's at, where's this at?
I think it's at Kansas State.
It's at Kansas State. But Arizona State, they've been really flying under the radar. I mean, they're not ranked, but they have the same record as Colorado. So I think we could very well see Arizona State upset Kansas State, especially with the way that Kansas State's been kind of trending this year, at least like towards the end. Like they've been kind of going downward spiral a little bit. But
yeah, no, I like it. My upset of the week, this is going to be crazy if this happens. I think BYU has been playing with fire a little bit too much, and I think they're finally going to pay for it. Kansas is not a good football team, and I think BYU is going to overlook them like a lot. And I think Kansas goes in and beats number 7th ranked BYU. I think it will be like a shocking thing, but I think it needs to happen because
I think it's possible.
I think it's possible because BYU, they're not that good. Like, I know they're undefeated. I personally don't think they're that good. After what I saw with the Utah game, I know people like say that's a rivalry game.
And it was at Utah.
It was at Utah. It was a crazy environment, but I don't know. You disagree?
I mean, you could say the same thing about Indiana though too. Like no bias, but like you could say the same thing about IU. Like, I mean, even though like our resume against Michigan is completely like just off the charts, but like you could say the same thing about Indiana. But I mean, I don't know. Like I could definitely see that happening too. I mean, like Kansas is riding high right now off that win, but I don't know. I think BYU. I mean, if they were like, for example, if we put BYU in another conference, what I think they'd be 9-0, no chance. But like compared to like the rest of the Big 12, I think they are the strongest team in the Big 12, no doubt. But
you think BYU is better than Colorado?
Yes. I don't have a doubt about that either. I'm very confident on that.
I don't
I
know.
think they probably are
I don't
overall,
know.
but Colorado, like, I feel like with each week, Colorado just looks better,
better
and
and
better.
better.
So I think if they were to play each other in that Big 12 championship, I think Colorado could come out on top in that.
Colorado has the
Um,
better quarterback.
But
That's for sure.
BYU, like, I would think more in Kansas. Like, I look more at Kansas after the way they played Iowa State last week. Their offense, I mean, Kansas is what, like 3-9 or something right now? Like
3-6.
3-6. They're 3-6 right now. But I think, like, after that win, they look like one of, if not the best 3-6 teams. I mean, they dropped so much points on Iowa State. They just completely,
45.
they just dismantled their defense. It was like
Yep.
Iowa State had no they had nothing. There's no response to Kansas. They just could not stop them. So I think just because of that, I mean, I think if Kansas keeps that same energy going up against BYU, I really think that's possible. I think that's a good upset pick. Like,
Also, I mean, the Big 12 in general is just not like one of the.
it's the chaos conference.
Yeah, it's the chaos conference where everyone's kind of beating up on each other. You thought Iowa State was gonna have a good run, then they lose to Texas Tech at home, I think it was, and then we think Texas Tech, oh, they're pretty good, and then Colorado goes in there and
And dismantles them.
scores 41. If Colorado, one thing about them the last couple weeks, I know he doesn't like them, but they've scored pretty consistently, like no matter who they've been playing. Colorado. If they score 40 points or 35 to 40 points consistently, I don't think their defense is good, but I think their defense is good enough to withstand their offense scoring 35 to 40 points every game.
I mean, yeah, I'll give Colorado their credit. Like, I mean, I don't mind them. I think they're a fun team to watch. But no,
Better than BYU.
oh yeah, yeah. But no, I think they have a story. It's actually a good story to watch. And I mean, obviously Kansas State and Iowa State, we said like a few weeks ago too, like in the ACC and the Big 12, it was the same like kind of like format. Like you had two big runner teams. Like for the ACC, you had Clemson and Miami, and for Big 12, you had BYU and Iowa State at the time. And now it's kind of like flip-flopped to the point where now Colorado and SMU, for both their conferences respectively, they've kind of taken the charge now. I mean, obviously BYU is still up there, but they've kind of made their pushes now. And I think this is where we're going to start to see the challenge for that top spot in each of the big Power 4 conferences. So I think like obviously SMU's in a better spot right now for like where they are in the ACC since they're undefeated and everyone else has at least one loss. But for the Big 12, like that is completely wide open. And like obviously like, Kansas State and Iowa State, like you said, if the upset does happen with Kansas over BYU, Kansas State and Arizona, or Kansas State and Iowa State, they can kind of make themselves push themselves back up there to the point where, because Kansas State's still ranked 16, so they're close to creeping into that top 12. So if they just win out and they see a Colorado loss, Kansas State can easily push themselves back up into that Big 12 game and put them in the running for that number 4 spot.
Yeah, and I mean also this 2-game stretch that BYU is about to have is not an easy stretch. I mean, they're going to play Kansas, obviously, who's really hot right now. Their offense seems to have finally figured it out. Like, they had high expectations going into this season, really fell off bad, but now it's like, okay, like, here's how we were supposed to be playing. Now let's just play like this the rest of the year and play spoiler. They go up against BYU this weekend. And then next weekend, BYU goes up against Arizona State, 7-2. Could possibly very well be a dark horse in the Big 12 conference if like just all chaos breaks loose, which I mean, it's the Big 12. We can almost expect that. And then Houston also, they beat Kansas State not too long ago. I think was it last weekend or was it
They beat Kansas State, Houston.
Houston beat Kansas State. I'm just blanking on when that was. I don't think it was last weekend. I think it was the weekend before.
Yeah, November 2nd.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, no, like, and BYU's gonna have to go up against them. Like, that's not an easy 3-game stretch for BYU by any means. So we could very well see BYU lose 1, maybe 2 of these games coming up.
And a lot of these Big 12 teams are kind of close in proximity, even though they're not close by record. Like Houston, for example, is 4-5. Kansas State is 7-2. Like, just by talent-wise on the field,
Yeah.
home and field advantage to that means everything in the world. So, I think BYU's due. I really do. I'm hoping we get a Colorado BYU.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like after the Miami Georgia Tech game, I mean, you play with fire too long, eventually you're gonna get burned.
Yep.
So if BYU does try to play with fire this weekend, they could very well be the next team that gets burned, which
also,
to us would be a huge benefit because then it would just be then only the Big Ten would have undefeated teams
yep.
out of the Power 4 schools, which is huge. Army right now is the only undefeated
G5
like group of 5 school, which to them plays huge in their favor. But I think Army has a bye week as well as we do. So the only 2 undefeated teams that are playing this weekend are BYU and Oregon. Maybe we see one of them fall. Maybe we don't.
You guys think Wisconsin has a chance at all against Oregon? No chance.
I mean,
It's at Wisconsin.
I think Wisconsin might like play it close in the beginning. I mean, kind of like what Maryland did. I mean, except that was at Oregon. Like it looked a little close at the beginning between Oregon and Maryland. Which I was very surprised. But then Oregon like pulled away as they do.
They always do. They're very consistent.
Yeah.
They score about 35, 38 points a game. Defense gives up anywhere from could be 6 points to 15 points. Like they're very consistent. Wisconsin did play Penn State close though over there. So I mean, we'll see. I mean Oregon, they haven't really been, I feel like, who was their best win, we'd say?
I mean, as of right now, it might be Boise State.
No, Oregon?
Yeah, for Oregon.
They
For
beat
Oregon.
Ohio State.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
they
yeah,
beat Ohio State.
Yeah,
I
okay.
guess besides Ohio State, like
Oh,
Yeah.
besides Ohio State?
Yeah, probably Boise State.
probably
yeah.
Boise.
Yeah.
They're gonna
They
they're
beat
gonna roll through people. I and also like I'll make it like a reference like I don't know if you guys saw like the Eastern Illinois Indiana basketball game. Like it was like 36-35 at half. Eastern Illinois was winning, and then IU won 90-55. I think that's the type of way that this game is going to go. I think Wisconsin will keep it close in
There
the
you
first
go.
half. Then Oregon will just like wipe them after. Like everyone loses their stamina against Oregon in that second half, and they just somehow just keep piling it on. Like it just gets more, like it just gets higher and higher for them. Like, and I think that's just what's keeping Oregon undefeated. Like no one has the same like, type of drive that keeps them into that game like Oregon does.
And they can also beat you in so many different ways.
Oh,
They can
yeah.
grind you out, just run the ball over and over, tire you out, or Dylan Gabriel can get you downfield. Like it really is like death by a thousand cuts with that team. But I think it should be a good game though, especially
Oh,
the first
1000%.
half. First half
Yeah.
for sure. Who's Penn State got this week?
Purdue.
The
I was tempted to take that as an upset this week. I was really thinking about it. I'm not even kidding.
Well, I would consider it as an upset. It's just the only thing is Purdue, I think, is actively trying to get their head coach fired.
They also, I mean, Purdue has also not won a single Big Ten conference game. They've actually only won one game total this year,
Yeah.
but it has not been against a Big Ten conference
Indiana
opponent.
State.
So
The Sycamores. Purdue, I watched them play Notre Dame. It was earlier in the year. I think the score was like 66-7.
Something like that.
Yeah, it was.
it was at Purdue.
Yeah, it was at Purdue. It was after Notre Dame lost to
NIU.
And I'm like, oh, maybe Purdue like makes this a game. No, I watched that game. They're allergic to tackling. They don't want to tackle. They're not there to play. I think they've quit for a while now, and I think it's gonna show.
I think they're allergic to football fields in general.
Yeah.
It's like wait till they come here for that Thanksgiving game. Oh my God,
It's gonna be great.
We're gonna wipe the floor with them.
I mean, I've said this before, but I want us to just drop we already set a record this year for like a certain amount of points. Like we dropped, I think it was 78
77
on
to
77
Yeah.
77-3 against
Western Illinois.
Western Illinois or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I want us to break that record against Purdue.
Really?
Yeah, I want because I mean, if Notre Dame can
task.
drop 66 on them,
Oh,
why
yeah.
can't we drop like 80 on them?
Dude, and
I
Notre
mean,
Dame,
come on.
Notre Dame did that, by the way, just by running the ball. They did not throw the ball,
Yeah.
like at all. So
And we have Curtis Rourke, who's a better passing quarterback than
Oh, for
Riley
sure.
Leonard right now.
you can
So,
expect to see a lot of backups in that Purdue game. I mean, Taven will probably want to pile it on too at that point, but like we'll have a bunch of running backs in. It'll be a stat game,
Yeah.
basically.
I mean, who knows? We might be winning by so much that we might have to bring, like, they might just be taking fans out of the stands and putting them in and letting them pile on too.
Hey, put me in, coach.
Put me in, Coach Sig. I got you.
Oh my gosh.
I think with that, we should move into. I'm kind of curious to see what you guys have for the rankings. Mine is a little crazy just because, I mean, I kind of talked about it earlier with like what I thought they were going to do, like with SMU. So yeah. So I guess I'll go first. I've got Oregon at 1, Ohio State at 2. So Ohio State would take the 5th spot. I have Texas at 3. So I guess like my top 3 are like the same as the AP, but I have BYU I have IU at 4 and then BYU at 5 above Penn State
And
Tennessee. Well, I guess I forgot to put Tennessee in my rankings. I should have put them in,
Ooh.
but I think I switched them out for Texas A&M because I think Texas A&M does have a chance to beat Texas. I think they could beat Texas possibly, and then get themselves.
Would Texas
in.
drop out at that point?
I'm not sure. I mean,
No,
Texas
I
would only
doubt
have
it.
2 losses, so Texas would just probably essentially switch with A&M. But yeah, no, then I have Penn State at 6. I have SMU at 7, Miami at 8, Notre Dame at 9, Texas A&M at 10, Ole Miss at 11, and then Boise State at 12. So
I like it.
the top 4, like I'd have Oregon as the big conference champion, Texas as the SEC, SMU as the ACC, and then BYU as the Big 12.
And what's your criteria when you do that? Is it like just the best teams, or like the best resume, or like the best record?
It's like mine is kind of weird because like I don't just look at what happens in the past. I'm also trying to use the rankings to predict the future.
Yeah.
So like I think that's part of the reason why I have Tennessee out, because on the off chance that they lose to Georgia, I don't think Georgia's going to jump up. I think
Gotcha.
it's going to be a different SEC team that jumps up, and that would be like Texas A&M. I mean, we already saw, like, I think Ole Miss, after the way they played Georgia and with their remaining schedule, I think they could very well make it in. But like I look at like overall record, eye test, like common opponents, especially. I mean, that's part of the reason why I have like IU above Penn State, like right next to Ohio State, like BYU above Penn State as well, because I think BYU has higher quality wins than Penn State. SMU above Miami because of like conference standing. I don't necessarily look at head to head though, just because like for example, like kind of going back to the South Carolina LSU game, like that both those teams honestly played really bad in that game at the beginning of the year, but South Carolina has been playing out of their minds the past couple weeks, and LSU has been doing the exact opposite. So
Interesting calls at that game too.
yeah, like I just so I also try to look at like future schedules and use like the projections of like how likely teams are going to make the like playoff themselves, and then just kind of like do like mental math and then just like stack the teams up in the rankings.
Gotcha.
All right, so which one of you guys wants to go next?
I can go.
All right.
So this is like a rich tapestry, okay? It can change week to week, but personally, it's like just the best teams, like I think like have the best teams currently. But it changes like, obviously week to week. So I got Oregon at 1, Texas at 2, Ohio State at 3, Indiana at 4, Tennessee at 5, BYU at 6, Penn State at 7, Notre Dame at 8, Alabama at 9, Ole Miss at 10, Georgia at 11, and then Miami at 12.
You're not factoring in the BYU upset loss?
No, I can't factor that in because they are still undefeated. Like,
Okay.
I want to put them. I want to put them lower, but I just can't do it at this point since they are undefeated.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm just sprinkling in though. In the future, it's definitely
That's
gonna
fair,
change.
that's fair.
It's definitely gonna change.
Yeah.
It's
No, I'm
definitely
saying
gonna
like
change.
mine will definitely change too, because like we don't know what is gonna happen like
And-
next week. Like for all we know, like Wisconsin can beat Oregon for all we know, and then everything just goes
Just
into
changes.
complete chaos.
Chaos.
Like
Yeah,
we really don't know.
I put Miami at 12 because I personally don't think Miami's that good. I think Miami is the fighting Cam Wards. I think their team is Cam Ward. They don't have any defense. Like, I
Yeah.
think if an SEC team played like Miami, you'd say Texas A&M, Tennessee, Georgia, pick any SEC team. I think Miami gets like beat pretty bad.
Yeah.
So I have them at 12.
All right. So for mine, I put mine like a playoff bracket, so I didn't actually do rankings. So I have them like
Okay.
if they were like seeded normally.
Perfect.
So I have Oregon, Texas at 2, BYU at 3, SMU at 4. Don't hate.
So
I have SMU winning the ACC.
So we have like the same like 4 teams like getting
Yes.
the bye weeks.
I'm a full believer in SMU.
You have BYU at 3?
I do. I have them winning the Big 12.
Interesting.
Okay. Ohio State at 5. Overall, I think Ohio State would have been number 2 for me if I were to like rank them like you guys both
Gotcha.
did. So I would have had Ohio State 2, but Ohio State 5. I have Tennessee 6. I think they're gonna beat Georgia, and I think because of that win, they're gonna be pretty highly ranked anyways. So I think they'll be above Indiana, which I have at 7. I have unfortunately Penn State at 8, Ole Miss 9, Miami 10, Bama 11, and then give me Army as the G5 team at 12. I'm telling you, Boise State will lose this week. Army's gonna win G5.
I like that. I like the respect for Army. I think it would be nice to see Boise State lose just so that way Army could kind of creep in there, you know?
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I
For
mean, I
America.
think,
for
Like-
America, of course.
I mean, ours are like the same but different in like so many ways. Like, I think it's just because like the like different, I guess, things that we look at. I mean, obviously we look at like maybe like strength of record is more important than like resume or like eye test or whatever. Like we all just like have different things of what's important, and obviously different predictions as well for the future, because since that is also a factor in our rankings, because like I feel like the college football playoff, like I feel like they just rank the teams based on like what's happened, but I don't know if I don't think they do it based on like what they think is going to happen in the future,
No.
except for when it suits them.
Yeah.
Like,
Based on last year when they left Florida State out, which I actually agreed with that decision because Florida State did have their backup quarterback in. They weren't producing really any yards or points, and it was clear to me that Florida State was going to be depleted in the college football playoff. But still, it's like they pick and choose when it's like, oh, we think this team is going to be really good in the future. Oh, actually, we think this team is just not good. And they just pick and choose. Like some of these teams are purely in the CFP rankings based off strength of schedule, and then Georgia has the number 1 strength of schedule, and then they're left out. So they're literally picking and choosing, I think. And I don't know. Are they expanding this? Because did I hear next year it's going to be 14 teams, or is this still going to be 12-team format
I
next
think
year?
it's 12 still.
I think it should still be 12.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is 12. But no, yeah, there's still a lot of football to be played.
Yeah.
So like I say it's every week too. Like the rankings is gonna be switched like almost completely. Well, at least for me, because if Boise State does win, then Army's completely dropped for me, unfortunately. But no, yeah, like if Tennessee loses, they'll be dropped out. I mean, like if the upset happens, if BYU loses, they're gonna be gone. And then like we said, like with Wisco, if they beat Oregon, then hell, Indiana may be the number 1 seed since they have a bye week and they don't play. So like we don't know. But no, yeah, there's still a lot of football to be played. So it's gonna be interesting how the next 4 weeks go before playoffs actually start.
Yeah, and sorry to bring this back up, but starting in 2026, it looks like they are expanding from 12 to 14 teams in 2026. And it looks like they're also considering taking off auto bids in the 14-team playoff.
So like no, like if you're conference champion, it doesn't matter.
That's
that what you're saying?
essentially what they're kind of moving towards. They haven't made a decision on it, but it will be a 14-team playoff in 2026. So not next year, but the next year. So
You know, I mean, I think one of the things I did like about this year was like being a conference champion
meaning
was
something.
a factor. Like it gives it so much more meaning,
Of course.
and it also like you're rewarded for being a conference champion
For playing
like,
the
especially
games.
like if you're
Yeah.
like one of the 4 highest ranked conference champions, you get a bye week. Like that's huge because then the team that you play next, like I mean, they're gonna be in a absolute dogfight to move on to the next round. And like they could have a bunch of their players injured. They're not going to be as rested. as the team with the bye week. So like the bye week, even though you don't get that home playoff game, the bye week is huge for this playoff. So I mean, I think
I will say if I was an SEC team like Alabama and Georgia, and I have like the right to like make my schedule how I want, I would avoid adding extra conference play games. Like at this point, they're pointless if you are doing your auto bid system, because you want to win as many games as possible, and you don't want to be sitting at 7-2 at this point in the season. So
yeah. You know, what a crazy turn of events this rankings has brought on, especially with like some of these key losses, like Georgia almost losing, LSU getting absolutely demolished, Miami losing, us winning. Like
thank God.
Yeah, no, it's been wild. Like there's just
bye
so
week's
much.
gonna help us.
Oh yeah,
a lot.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
I feel like every week. I mean, I remember saying this one time, like with Notre Dame, like how they were like the big winners. Like it was like kind of early on in the season because they had the bye week. I was like, they were the big winners of this weekend because they just moved up without having to do anything. I think I said this about Colorado too, but like, I feel like every team that has a bye week has a chance to like win because they are not at risk of losing.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge benefit of the bye week. You're not at any sort of
Just
disadvantage of losing. The only thing though is you can't win. Like that's the only thing.
Yeah.
But like you also can't lose.
No.
Which means that especially if you're like in the like 13, 14, 15 spots, like there's like 12 teams above you that could lose a game. I mean, one of them is bound to lose a game. I mean, every week there's been at least one, I think, that's lost. So
those teams with the bye week, those teams are when the winners of the other round, the first round, come in. Is it a neutral site? It's not on campus, right?
What are you talking about?
So you know how IU, based on this projection,
Yeah.
would have a on-campus game at home.
First round's on campus. Everything else is
it's neutral site. Gotcha.
Everything
Gotcha.
else is neutral
Yeah.
after that because that's like where the bowl, like Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl, like that's where all those start.
I mean, if you look at this bracket right now, Ole Miss and Penn State, like Penn State, obviously with James Franklin, but if Ole Miss beats Penn State, I mean, they basically have a bye week against BYU.
I think Ole Miss, like, I mean, I like this Ole Miss team right now. The way they've been playing, they could very well beat BYU. I mean, the way they play Georgia, I mean, they took them to the dog pound and left them there to be put down.
I mean, if you think about it, Ole Miss, all they have to do is beat a fraudulent Penn State team and then a BYU team who doesn't play against a lot of very good competition, and then they make it to the semifinals. You know, just based off of those two games.
Yeah, and I mean, also like
it's
Ole
almost
Miss and Penn State did play each other in a bowl game last year, so if they do end up playing each other, that's going to be a rematch.
Yep.
Um,
Jackson Dart played in
last
that
year.
game. I think.
I don't remember.
I think he did. Maybe.
Either way, he's a better quarterback of himself this year than he was last year. I'll tell you that.
Of course.
So
He's better than Drew Aller.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, I hate Penn State.
They're all on pumpkin watch. They turn into a bunch of pumpkins when it comes to big games.
I have a feeling we will too, though. Unfortunately, I hope it doesn't happen.
Well,
but I feel like if we play Bama, we're gonna get rolled over.
Well, yeah. With this, if it was a snow game, who do you think that benefits more?
Us,
Probably definitely us.
but when we look at experience now, we are so far out the window.
Oh, of course.
So I don't know how that'll kind of.
I will say, like Bama, you don't know what team you're gonna get. Like they've looked like the best team in the country the last 2 weeks that they've played games, but then you see them against Vanderbilt. Then you see them against South Carolina, and I know South Carolina's been hot. Like they were trying to give that game away to South Carolina, and I don't think this Bama team is as very thorough as the Nick Saban teams were. Like Nick Saban, if this was a Nick Saban led team coming into Bloomington, I would concede defeat. But I think Kalen DeBoer has these little holes in his team, not talent wise, obviously not talent wise, just where they let off the gas a little bit, and I think IU. I mean that's perfect for them to find those holes. And if they can find those holes and expand on them, they'll be fine. But, I mean, as of right now, where you stand, how Bama looks, Bama would probably win pretty substantially if it was today. But again, college football is changing every single day, like you said. So we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, and I mean, kind of going off that too, like Bama, like whenever they play teams that are good at defending the run, they struggle.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
if all we pretty much have to do is just
QB
defend the
contain?
run, contain Milrow, and that's pretty much it. I mean, we already have great secondaries that would be able to match up with Ryan Williams.
Woo.
So, I think
That kid's nuts.
it would definitely be a closer game, I think, than people would think. But I mean, kind of going back to like the whole like experience argument. I mean, I remember last year when I like was doing this by myself, like I was low key trashing on Michigan so hard because they were just playing easy team after easy team besides Ohio State.
It's funny you bring
And
that
then
up.
and then they go and win the national championship.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, I think it really brings up the argument as to how important like resume and like the teams you play really are.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
I mean,
as long as you
definitely
take care of business. you
yeah.
know?
Like it's
And it's how you take care of business. Like, for example, Michigan was blowing out teams left and right last year when
Yeah.
we played them.
we're doing that.
And we're doing that. The only team we didn't do that to was to
Michigan.
Michigan. But if you look at the strength of schedule from last year, Michigan's strength of schedule, it's around the same as our strength of schedule this year, around the same time.
Yeah.
And
And we're putting up better stats.
yeah. I mean, listen, obviously it's Indiana bias. Like we go to the school. Like it's a really good team. We're 10-0. We have beat teams like we've left no doubt when we play teams like Nebraska or Michigan State. And obviously you see the little bit of the cracks in Michigan. But I think it's because Michigan's defensive line and talent level is still really good. They just have an incompetent coaching staff and quarterback play, which is if you don't have good coaching or good quarterback play, I mean, your team is not that good.
Yeah. I mean, kind of with that, it's time to wrap, unfortunately. But we will see you guys all next week. Who knows what is going to happen with these rankings? I can't even project what we're even going to be talking about because there's just so much that could happen every single week. And it feels like with every passing week, it just gets more and more chaotic and so much harder to predict. So, for all we know, we could be talking about Wisconsin upsetting Oregon.
Or the Jayhawks going into BYU.
Yeah, Jayhawks going into BYU. Or, for some reason, maybe Northwestern upsets Ohio State. I don't know.
I'd love to see that,
I mean,
please.
That would help us so much. But it's possible. It is very possible.
For Northwestern
we don't know.
to beat Ohio State.
I mean, it's home field advantage, you know?
It's in a baseball stadium, though.
Yeah.
Baseball.
Yeah, but
Is
I mean,
it Wrigley?
yeah, Wrigley.
Field.
But I mean, for them, that definitely plays in Northwestern's favor because they're going to be
1,000%.
because they're going to be able to seat more people in the stadium than the stadium they currently have.
Oh,
So,
that practice field, because I was there for the IU game. It was small. I mean, it was crazy scenery, but it was a really small practice field.
They have
but-
the most unorthodox fields, I swear, in the program history. My goodness.
yeah. So we'll see you guys next week. Hopefully with a positive projection for IU football against Ohio State at Big.